Hello everyone, this is Sirr's Movies, the official podcast of SirrWaka.com. I'm your host, Sterling Woods. I'm joined by
your friendly neighborhood Canadian, Evan Todd-McCoy.
Alright, this week will be our first end of the year recap where we list our top 10 best movies as well as our 5 worst movies of the year. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and other podcast apps. You can contact us at sirrwaka@gmail.com. That's SIRRWAKA@gmail.com for any questions or comments. Now, before we get into it, I just kind of want to ask, how was your Christmas?
It was good. I watched a lot of movies trying to see everything I could before the end of the year. How about you?
Yeah, same. I knew we were doing this episode, so I was trying to cram in as many movies as I could, staying up late, and found some good ones. So, yeah. All right, so let's just, I just kind of want to, touch base with you. And I think we're going to go ahead and start on our worst movies of the year, get that out the way so people kind of know where we stand. So, did you rank your top 5 worst?
I sure did.
You did. I think I just kind of put mine in any order. I know I thought these were the worst movies of the year, so don't judge me, whatever my 5 worst are. But we'll start at number 5. What was your 5th worst movie of the year?
Just a little disclaimer. My worst movies are typically, I see bad movies, but not that many. So, like movies that are just straight up bad. I think one of the worst movies I saw all year was Truth or Dare, a really terrible horror movie. But I usually don't put those on a list. What I do is I take movies that should have been good and ended up being really disappointing. So my 5th worst movie, Bad Times at the El Royale.
Why is that?
Well, just, like we were talking about a little bit before, but it's a Tarantino movie for people who've never seen a Tarantino movie. It's bloated. It's 2.5 hours long, and there's no earthly reason to be that long. And while it has some good performances, they're the kind of flashy character actor kind of performances that are just kind of like, look at me, and the movie needed to be a little more fun, I think, to justify that.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It didn't make my top 10, but it didn't make my 5 worst either. Just kind of throwing in there somewhere in the middle.
Fair enough.
My 5th worst is Hereditary, actually, because not necessarily because it was a terrible movie. It just wasn't the movie I thought it would be. That's kind of how my 5 worst will be. They're not necessarily terrible movies. They're just either not what I expected, not what I wanted to see. I just didn't enjoy them this year. So that's why I'm ranking them in my top 5. And definitely, I think I said this before, I'm a Christian, so it's just the ending of this movie, not giving any spoilers away, but it really turned me off. So this definitely is on my worst of the year list. This movie has single-handedly changed my policy on no spoilers. Before this movie, I wanted to know as little as possible about movies before I went to see it, because I just really I really like that first experience, that shock you get knowing nothing. You just can't, even if it's a good movie and then you can enjoy watching it time and time again, you never really get that first shocking moment. So I tried to go spoiler-free as possible, and this movie single-handedly let me say, you know what? Let me find out a little bit before I go, because I don't want to walk into a Hereditary again. But
yeah, well, people would try so hard, right, not to spoil that movie either. So you would, even if you were trying to find out about it, I think it would be kind of hard if you saw it around the time it came out to even find out about it, right? Because it had that whole hyped up we're not going to tell anybody anything because it's so shocking and so surprising. Now, it's not on my worst 5, but I more or less agree with you. I thought it was disappointing. I thought the first half was pretty solid and surprising for not being really a horror movie, but a movie about grief and mental illness. And then it just becomes a derivative series of cliches and poorly justified tropes that don't really feel like they belong with the rest of the movie. So I didn't like it much either.
Yep. All right, what was your number 4?
My number 4, speaking of horror movies, is A Quiet Place. I think that's the most overrated movie of 2018. I liked it better when it was called Signs. And I just thought it was half a good movie. The first half, again, was much better than the second half, where they just kept breaking all the rules they established in the first half. Everything special about the movie, everything interesting about it, they just toss it out the window. And I feel like there's a lot of story beats left on the table in that one. Lots of stuff that we could get into if we had more time that I just feel like doesn't go anywhere or doesn't come from anywhere. So I just thought it was kind of a half-assed movie, actually.
I agree. I don't think we discussed it too much on the podcast, but that's one of the ones where I felt like just everything that could go wrong did go wrong in the end of the movie, and that just kind of cheapened it for me. It kind of took away the realism where the monster just kind of went everywhere he shouldn't have gone, and I don't know, it just the first half of the movie felt like it was going to be really interesting, and the second half it reminded me that I was watching a movie. So
yeah, all that incident based like storytelling, hey, like where it's like incident, you know. Like, I agree with you.
Indeed. Now, my number 4 worst of the year is Annihilation.
Oh, my heart.
I'm sure that's on your top list, but it did work for me. Like I said, I read the book, and I'm one of the few people that actually thought the book was pretty interesting. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I don't know. I guess I'm, especially books that are turned into movies, I always want to dig into the book kind of to get the full story, because I know the movie's going to cut it down a little bit, and that definitely happened here. And I feel like all the interesting parts were kind of inner monologues and kind of world building stuff that's in the book, and pretty much all that was cut out to make the movie more cinematic. And I understand people liked certain scenes, but it just really didn't work for me. It was really boring. It took me a few times to try to watch it, and just like I said, that's definitely on my worst of the year, and I know you liked it, so tell me I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I think you're crazy wrong about this one, especially like. But it's interesting that you say that, because I've heard people talk about the book and the movie together. I read the book after I saw the movie, and usually I like the kind of book that it is, and there's some things I like about the book, but ultimately I kind of feel like I would swap my positions. I think the book is super fucking boring, and I think the movie is doing the best it can to make the book engaging as a movie. So I don't really fault it for cutting some stuff and being a little less weird in some ways, but also a whole lot more weird in other ways, in order to make it a more cinematic and engaging experience. I do think it's interesting that they decided to make it a horror movie, because it more or less is, but the book isn't really a horror book in the normal sense. It's kind of more like, it reminded me a lot of Stalker, and Tarkovsky's movie Stalker, and the book series it's based on, Roadside Picnic. That's what I think the writer Jeff Vandermeer was going for. So there's merit to both, I think. And I think we would agree at least that Natalie Portman's pretty good in it. Tessa Thompson's pretty good. Can we agree about the performances? No? Maybe you want a Natalie Portman to be a little less stoic. She's pretty stoic in the movie. She doesn't emote a lot.
Yeah, it's just, I guess she was doing what the movie role asked her to do, but none of it worked for me, especially Tessa Thompson. It was too... Well, actually, I'm going to lie. I'm going to take that back. I think Tessa Thompson, for the role that she had, was good. I think Gina Rodriguez was not so much for me. But
okay, I can see that.
Yeah. But, all right, moving on.
Yep.
Your number 3 worst of the year.
This movie is so boring and bad that it's almost not worth talking about, because it's going to be boring and bad to talk about it, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit before on a previous episode. But Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is probably the only movie I've watched this year where I wanted to turn it off. And I just grudgingly finished it. It was just half again one movie, half again another movie, neither particularly good. It felt like it was rehashing a lot of the best parts from the first 2 Jurassic Park movies without really saying anything new or doing anything new. I think that the leads lack charisma with each other. That would be Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt. And I just don't like Chris Pratt in this role, really. He does nothing for me playing this like macho tough guy. It just doesn't work.
And I think that would have made my worst of the year, but I forgot it existed. So
yeah, there you go.
I tried to go back and remember everything I watched this year. It just completely, even like looking through what happened this year, completely slipped my mind. So yeah, that's kind of what it meant to me. Like I said, it was... I didn't like the first Jurassic World, and I didn't like this one. So, yeah, definitely on the worst of the year. I have no complaints about that one. My number 3 is actually going to be Sorry to Bother You. I had a whole lot of high hopes for that one. I think that's kind of why it's in my worst. Once again, not necessarily saying that this was a bad movie. It just was bad to me personally.
Yeah, it didn't do it for you.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be as non-spoilery as possible, but I really liked the first, 2/3 of it. It was really interesting. It was telling a story in an interesting way. And then the last third, it just completely fell apart to me. I guess it was, if you're a smart person, you can enjoy it. You know, it's kind of one of those things where it's saying something, so the stuff you see on the screen isn't really supposed to be what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to mean something. You're supposed to see the deeper meaning in it, blah, blah, blah. And I can respect that intellectually, but just the movie watching experience didn't work for me. I thought it really got silly, and I just didn't like the ending at all, pretty much. The first 2/3 were the first 2/3 of a really interesting movie, and then the last third was so bad that it ruined the first 2/3 for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but, yeah,
I get that. I liked it a lot more than you did, but I feel like I need to see it again. It was one of the tougher cuts off my top 10 list. There's like a handful of movies that were painful to cut. That was one of them. I do need to see it again, I think, but I felt this a little bit the same way as you in the theater, where 2/3 of the way through, the movie got really weird. And again, no spoilers, but it's really weird. It goes to a very weird place. And I wasn't ready for that. I did not know. Yeah. It's kind of like Hereditary in that sense, where people who saw the movie before I did, they didn't want to say anything about it. Critics were trying to get as many people to go in knowing nothing as possible because they knew how weird it was going to get. And I am sensing kind of a pattern, though, because Annihilation is also another movie that gets pretty weird and abstract, and it's more about ideas. So maybe that's just not your thing.
No, like I said, I read the book. I knew where Annihilation was going. It just... the movie went there worse than the book did. And it was, like I said, was Sorry to Bother You. It's one of those things where if it went to a weird place and I just, didn't get it or whatever, that's one thing. But I just think where that movie went, it was just so unexpected and so against kind of what I thought the movie was doing that it just completely turned it off for me. Like I said, I guess
that's fair.
To smarter people than I was like, oh, well, you're not getting it because he's saying this and he's saying this, and that may be true, and I respect their opinions, but just for me personally, it didn't work for me. But all right, what about you? What's your number 2 movie?
Tomb Raider. It ain't a year of movies without a bullshit video game adaptation, and Tomb Raider is 2018's. It's not as bad as Assassin's Creed, but it was bad. The action isn't good. Alicia Vikander could have slept through the role and kind of did. I like Daniel Wu a lot, but he was kind of wasted as this weird sort of half sidekick, half love interest. And I found the movie kind of forgettable in general. Like, I forgot that it happened, kind of like Jurassic World. And then when I realized, oh, that was this year, because it was early in the year, it got dumped in the pre-spring kind of run-up. When I realized it was this year, I was like, oh yeah, I hated that movie. Did you see it?
That's the thing. Like, say, I remember seeing it, but I don't remember how it ended. So I'm trying to remember if I saw it or I just think I saw it. But either way, it didn't make my top 10 list. I put it like that.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah. So,
what's your number 2?
Yeah, my number 2. I think I'm going to go ahead and put Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Grindelwald. Let me give you the whole title so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It was a real letdown for me. I feel like, I think I talked about this on the podcast. I really, I don't say I loved the first movie, but I was very interested in what it was doing and I wanted to see where it would take me. And I feel like number 2, it learned all the worst lessons. It was a real letdown for me, just on multiple levels. Because like I said, I was a big fan of Harry Potter and I really was interested in the world building, but I feel like the Fantastic Beasts and Crimes of Grindelwald, it really just, it learned all the wrong lessons. It made it all about, magic and the stuff you can do with magic and cool visual effects, and not about the actual story or the world building. And that's what made all the J.K. Rowling books popular, just not necessarily the magic stuff, but kind of where the world that the magic lived in. And I feel like Fantastic Beasts learned all the wrong lessons. It was, I don't know, just it left me really disappointed walking out the theater. Like, I don't want to see the third one. I feel like, this movie let me down. And, that's very unfortunate, just kind of to make you sour the whole franchise on you by what they let it turn into. But, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see it. No, actually, you talking about it convinced me that it wasn't one that I needed to see before the year was over, so I didn't make an effort. I really didn't like Fantastic Beasts, the first one, anyway. I thought it had some really good stuff. I liked Eddie Redmayne in it a lot, but I just thought that it was like super long for no reason. And I've never been much of a Harry Potter guy. Like, I respect the books. I've read most of them, but not all of them. I like the movies, some more than others. But in general, I kind of think that I just slept on it until I was too old to really give a shit. So Fantastic Beasts, like, the whole idea of it existing does, like, nothing for me. I was pretty disappointed, though, when Colin Farrell turned into Johnny Depp. That's not the first time they've done that in a movie. And I like Colin Farrell a whole lot more than I like Johnny Depp.
I'm going to actually turn that around. I think Johnny Depp was the best part of that movie.
The first one or the second one?
Both of them. I think him being Grindelwald really worked for me. I think I like him. He's a quirky, kind of weird actor, and I know that kind of turns people off, just his stick. But he really worked for me as Grindelwald. I really, actually enjoyed him as the character.
That's fair.
Just the movie that he was built in didn't work for me. And hell, I just want to say, all these movies I'm kind of putting in my worst you really like, so this might be your favorite movie of the year, so you might want to go back and watch it.
I don't know. We agree about a couple of them at least. Annihilation is just a big hurting bone to pick between you and me, but that we'll never resolve that.
Indeed. All right, what's next up for you?
Number 1, Future World. I hate to put an indie on my worst list.
Yeah, I'm about to say I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't. It's an indie film, and it's James Franco, and it's a post-apocalyptic movie. It's got Lucy Liu, it's got Suki Waterhouse, who's like big now or is going to be big soon. She's had a hell of a year, and James Franco, right? And James Franco plays this bad guy, this kind of post-apocalyptic bad guy, right? And there's a robot in it, but it's just, I've never seen a movie that was like so up its own ass and not even trying to be good, that it almost felt like for a while that I was watching somebody try to make a bad movie, like on purpose. But it just had nothing. It wasn't even.
See it.
What's that?
I said now I kind of want to see it.
Yeah, well, I that's why I wanted to see it. I heard it was terrible, but it looked like Mad Max, and I'm always down for a post-apocalyptic movie. But it was just total garbage. Like, just aggressively bad. And I like a good bad movie, and Future World isn't a good bad movie. So when you see it, maybe with the diminished expectations that I'm laying down here, you might find some merit in it, but I just couldn't find anything to like about it.
And that's how I felt about my number 1 movie, A Wrinkle in Time.
I didn't see that.
That hurt my heart. Just because, I'm black and I really want to support black directors, filmmakers, anybody in the industry, and just seeing this, it's the first $100 million movie given to a black woman, and I had high hopes. It had Oprah Winfrey in it. It felt like something made for 12-year-old girls. I guess I mean that in the best way. I feel like the 12-year-old girl is going to walk into that movie, going to watch it and walk out feeling inspired. She's going to, it speaks to her in all the right ways. It tells a little girl's, a kid's story or whatever, whatever. But I'm a grown up, I'm a grown man. And like a lot of the Pixar movies, they're technically made for kids, but they work for adults. They tell deeper stories that both kids can enjoy and adults can enjoy. And this one, I feel like it was specifically for children, and especially little girls in particular. And I saw a whole lot of Twitter tweets about, oh my gosh, this spoke to me, and it reminded me of all the things girls can do. And, I love this. I'm so glad you made this. And, from their perspective, that's wonderful, and I'm proud of Ava DuVernay for making it. But just me personally, I enjoyed nothing about this movie. The kid parts were so terribly kiddie. The writing was terrible. It worked for me on 0 levels. I walked out of there really disappointed, but I couldn't tell people not to see it. Because like I said, if you're, a 12-year-old girl, that's probably, your, a milestone in your life. You're probably going to be 30 taking it back on when you watch this movie. And that's wonderful for you. And I don't want to take that away from you. But for me, it was garbage. And I hated, myself for saying that. But yeah, you say you didn't see that one?
No, I didn't. But actually your attitude about it sounds kind of like how I felt about Bumblebee. Just a movie that was really probably great if you're a kid, but had nothing to offer me as an adult, really. Besides some interesting meta commentary about the Transformers franchise, but that's only something a movie nerd cares about anyway. Wrinkle in Time, I didn't want to get my heart broken, really. Like, the trailers look really bad. I kind of hate the book. It's a really popular book, but I kind of hate it. And I hate reading it to kids, and I've had to do that a bunch. I just don't like it very much, so I had nothing, really in the tank for that movie to begin with. And then when people said it was bad, I just kind of I just didn't want it. It was like not wanting to drive it's like not wanting to drive into basically an auto wreck scene. You just don't want to. You just want to avoid the train derailment if you can. That's kind of how I felt about it.
I never read the book. I had no emotional attachment to it. I just knew Ava DuVernay was making it, and she's made some great stuff.
Yeah, she's cool.
They gave her $100 million to make it, so I was like, I'm in, But like I said, I walked out just so because as I said, being black, you kind of want to support black directors doing black things, and just watching it was like, oh man, what do I tell people? This, because it just, like I said, it was probably good for a certain demographic, but for me, I got nothing from it, and it was just embarrassing to watch. But
I get that.
All right, well, that is the top 5 worst movies we've seen this year. I know there's some controversial choices, but now you can, we can get into the good stuff, So just kind of before we get into it, for those that don't know, you think you do a top 15 on your website, is that right?
Yeah, so I've got a blog. It's thunderclam.wordpress.com. Thunderclam, spelled exactly like it sounds. It's an old video game handle, don't ask. I do a top 5 games, a top 10 worst movies, and a top 15 best movies every year. I've been doing the movies for over 10 years. So you can find that there. It'll be a little more in depth than what we're going to talk about here, and there'll be a little bit more, a few extra entries. So check that out if you feel like it, and leave me a comment if you want to argue with me.
All right, and I'll link to it in the show notes. So wherever you're watching the podcast, listen to the podcast, you can click the show notes, you can link to it, and you can check out the website. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into it. We didn't discuss this beforehand, so I'm just kind of interested in hearing, what was your number 10 movie?
My number 10 best movie of the year, and you can find a review of it right on sirwaka.com, is A Prayer Before Dawn. So that one I kind of put in there over something like Searching, although I considered both because of what they're trying to do with cinematic techniques. So A Prayer Before Dawn could have been just like a fight movie, but because of the way it's shot, the way it's executed conceptually and visually, it's something special. So for pushing the envelope a little bit, and for being a really interesting movie about masculinity, and for being a fight movie, which I always like, that's why it's in my number 10 spot. Did you get a chance to see that one yet?
I did not. Like I said, I know that's kind of one of the movies that you got to kind of be in the right mood to see.
Agree, yeah.
Things have been so busy. I've never been in the type of mood to sit down and watch it, but I've heard you say good things about it, so I definitely kind of do want to check it out one day, even though our tastes seem to, not
our tastes do differ
much.
Sometimes, yeah. I'd be interested to see what you think of it when you do see it, for sure.
Indeed. All right, so my number 10 is called Anon. I saw it on Netflix. I don't know if you got a chance to see it.
I did.
I saw a lot. I think Netflix is doing it. They're changing the world, man. The problem with them being so big and doing so much is that they drop gems like this without any advertisement and nobody gets to see them. So yeah. It's just kind of things that they drop them. If you catch them, great. If not, they disappear into the ether and you got to go search for them. But anyway, I think I do like the sci-fi genre. That's kind of probably one of my favorites, and especially when it's done right. And this was kind of right up my alley. It's got Amanda Seyfried or Seyfried. I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Seyfried, I think.
Seyfried, yeah. And then Clive Owen in it. Kind of about a futuristic world where everything's recorded, and Amanda Seyfried's like a super duper hacker or whatever. It's an interesting story. I kind of don't want to get into it, but if you like sci-fi, I definitely want to recommend you check it out. And like I said, stuff like that just kind of jumps to my top 10. I feel like the same about my top 10 as my top 5 worst. These aren't necessarily the best movies you're going to see in the theaters, the most, well-directed, whatever. These are just, they spoke to me. They're interesting. And like I said, I'm real big in the sci-fi world, and this, I really dug it. So, what about you? What's your number 9?
Before we get to my number 9, which I'm sure you'll love my number 9. I did see Anon, and it is really good. Netflix had a killer year actually with original films. Anon wasn't one of the ones that I considered for my top 15 or top 10, but there were a couple Netflix films, Apostle and Hold the Dark, that I'll give an honorable mention to because they're not going to show up on my list. Spoiler. But Anon was really good. I thought Anon was great. I like the guy who makes those movies. I can't remember his name right now, but he made like In Time and Gattaca. Andrew Nichols, that's his name. And I like his movies a lot. And Anon felt like kind of a lesser, like a couple steps down, but it felt like a step up from like The Host and some of the movies he's made recently. So I did like it quite a bit actually.
Yeah, I'm one of the supporters of In Time.
I like that movie too.
People shit on that movie all the time and talk trash about Justin for making it, but I really enjoyed it. I could watch it any time it comes on TV.
I got it on Blu-ray. Yeah, I love that movie. I love it. I love what it says. I love that movie. So, and I love Gattaca like a lot. So Andrew Nichols is my guy. I love his movie. So Anon would be something that would be right in the middle of my like pretty good but not great, and somewhere around my like 16, 17 spot if I was making a top 20, maybe. But yeah, I wanted to say too, I feel the same way about my lists as you do, where they're not really necessarily the best movie in terms of like all the different metrics you could think about for a great movie. They're just ones that I really enjoyed, were my favorites, said something to me, so I'm with you on that. I guess number 9 for me is Mandy. Now, Mandy is a divisive movie, but it was kind of a cult hit this year, and it's another one that I want to see again, like Sorry to Bother You, except that I cut Sorry to Bother You. With Mandy, I loved it enough when I first saw it. to include it, but I think it would actually be in my top 5 if I'd seen it twice. I just never had a chance to do that. And I think it's a brilliant film. It's a little misleading because the first half's a lot different from the second half if you haven't seen it. So I encourage anybody listening, and they're waiting until now or whatever to finally take the plunge and see it, to really go into it with an open mind and track down Panos Cosmatos, his first movie, Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is also brilliant and completely different. But Mandy was a knockout for me. Nicolas Cage, baby. Did you see it?
So I've heard good things about it. I know it's wild and crazy.
Oh yeah, it's weird.
Nicolas Cage goes to number 10 on the Nicolas Cage scale, but I never got a chance to watch it. So it's definitely something I want to look out for this year. When I get a chance to watch it. But
what's your number 9?
My number 9 is actually Blockers. Like I said, I'm a big comedy guy, so comedies kind of make my movies more than quote unquote better movies because they speak to me more. I like to laugh and enjoy them, especially when they're done right. Once again. Now, Blockers was kind of a surprise hit for me because when you watch the trailers, you kind of know what you're going to get, but the writing was actually a whole lot better than I expected. You get in there, you enjoy it. It's long story short, it's about a group of parents who know that their kids are going to have sex on prom night, so you kind of get what the gist of the comedy is going to be, parents hiding in bushes, that kind of thing. But I don't know, the actual script was done right. It's got a whole lot of female empowerment type stuff. It's not as sexist as you think it's going to be, but I really enjoyed it. So like I said, that definitely made my top 10 list. Did you have to get a chance to see Blockers?
I haven't, but it's on my list because I'm happy to see you put it on here because I've seen it pop up a few times as like a surprise. This movie is way better than I expected. And I just haven't had a chance to see it. But this has been not a bad year for comedies that kind of come out of nowhere and are actually way better than they have any right to be. But no, I haven't seen Blockers yet, but that's one I'll get to either right before the end of the year here or early in the next year.
All right. What is your number 8?
My number 8 is Upgrade. It's another indie. It's everything Venom was trying to be. I have a feeling, Sterling, that if you saw Upgrade, if you haven't seen it, we haven't never talked about it, but you would dig it. I think you'd really like it. It's a sci-fi movie, takes place in the future, a little bit, ahead of now, and it's about a Luddite, a guy who's a complete technophobe, does not like technology, works on old cars, but he ends up getting into some trouble, and he needs to rely on some technology to it's kind of like he's trying to figure out what happened to him, basically. And so he's kind of doing this detective thing. Meanwhile, his body is doing all kinds of stuff that he doesn't mean for it to do because of the technology. And it's just got a really good centering performance from Logan Marshall Green, and has a surprising degree of like cool sci-fi stuff and world building on a budget, which is always kind of neat to see. And some really good body horror, actually. Some pretty upsetting stuff, but in a good way.
Yeah, and as interesting as that is, that's actually my number 6 movie.
That's your what?
Yeah, that's my number 6. Yeah, I did see it, and I did love it as well. That's like I said, we've been diversifying so much on this list. That's nice to see. Especially something unexpected that catches both of our lists. I did see it. I did love it as well. It felt like kind of a Black Mirror-esque kind of vibe to it, but done well. So like I said, I really enjoyed it. I didn't know kind of what to expect. And I thought I was going to see Hardcore Henry. Did you get a chance to see that?
Yeah, I'd actually like that movie quite a bit, too.
Yeah, so that was actually done pretty well. And I thought this was going to be kind of the same vein just based on the trailers. But I was actually pretty surprised. I really enjoyed it. I didn't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. But like I said, I definitely had fun with the Upgrade. So that's why I put it a little bit higher. It's my number 6.
Nice.
So my number 8 is actually Black Klansman.
Nice.
So, yeah, like I said, I don't know if it made your list, but it's definitely on mine. I really enjoyed it. It was like very humorous. I really liked the character work and kind of the story it was telling. I didn't know what to expect with this kind of movie. I didn't know if it was going to be a really, kind of emotionally heart-wrenching kind of story, or if it was going to be over the top silly. But I think it kind of walked the line pretty good, told a good story. And it's one of the better Spike Lee directed joints that I have seen in a while. Spike Lee's pretty hit or miss, so I was kind of worried as to what he would do with this. As I said, just kind of, you don't know what you're going to get when you get Spike Lee joints these days, but it's actually, definitely worked for me. I don't know, it was better than I expected to be, and I really enjoyed it, so it's my number 8. Did you happen to see it?
I did, and I reviewed it also on SirWaka.com. I think it might have been the first movie I reviewed for you. I loved it too, and that was a bitter cut. I cut it from my list, but I was close. It's the best Spike Lee movie since 25th Hour, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And I agree with you about Spike Lee. He's hit or miss. Not always making a movie that I can really get behind, but Black Klansman I could definitely get behind, and it's well worth watching. That tonal tightrope. I feel like it stumbles a little too much in it. It gets a little too silly and a little too broad sometimes for me. But that's about the only criticism I can make of it, really. I think most of the time it's really well balanced, like you were saying.
I really loved how he wove into the Black history aspects of it, the fact that it was kind of based on a real person.
Yeah.
You know, I really think it was saying something bigger than just the movie it was selling, you know. So, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I really think, you know, it's kind of, as you're saying, it's probably one of his better movies in the past, you know, decade or two. So, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad to make it. And this makes me look forward to what he's doing next. But anyway, what's your number 7 movie?
Number 7 is Blind Spotting for me, which was my angry political American racial tension movie, I guess, this year. Black Klansman could have had that spot easily, but I think one of the things that tipped Blind Spotting into the spot was its tonal consistency, and it's a little bit more immediate, a little bit more powerful because it's not historical, and it's also I've seen it more recently. Honestly, that's a big part of it. I watched Blind Spotting a couple days ago, and it's the only movie on my list that I've seen that recently. But it was so good and so powerful. Like, everybody hyping that movie they're totally right. You got to see it if you haven't, and the kids at home, you know, if you haven't seen it, go see it. It just floored me.
Yeah, this is all the way up in my number 3, so we'll get to that in a little bit.
Nice.
But like I said, I really enjoyed it as well, kind of for the same reasons as Black Klansman. So I really like kind of black stories, and, you know, just I really thought, just looking at the trailers, this was going to be kind of one of the heart-wrenching Fruitvale Station kind of joints where you see a black guy die, and that's kind of what the whole movie's about. But it told a much kind of a deeper story, and told stories I didn't expect to see, and just the directing choices and the filmmaking choices, the way the main character just kind of raps throughout, and then at the end it gets a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Hyper realistic, to where there's a scene where he kind of raps in the scene, and it really worked. You know, just there's not a lot of directors that could pull that off, and it really worked for me. And the story it was telling, it was really well done. And like I said, I think I've seen this on a lot of top 10 lists this year, and I'm really glad. And I'm hoping to see more movies like it. So yeah, that's why I made my number 3. All right, my number 7. I put Crazy Rich Asians at number 7. Like I said, just kind of the same general idea as Black Klansman and others. It really spoke to me. I really liked the story it was telling. And it's one of those movies where it's notable, first and foremost, because it has an all-Asian cast, the first time in, I think, like 25 years where it has an all-Asian cast. But that's not really what the movie's about. It just so happens to have an all-Asian cast, which I think is more important. The fact that it's telling a story just entirely from a different culture. They're not necessarily throwing it down your throat. You know, it's not, you know, look at what an all Asian cast can do, blah, blah, blah. It's just, this is the story that they want to tell, and that story is an Asian story, you know. So that's, I don't know, I really, the fact that they did it like that, and it was a really good movie. I'm a big fan of rom-coms. I love to laugh and cry. I'm a big teddy bear. So the fact that they make this, and it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. There was a scene at the end that kind of choked me up. So I'm looking forward to more movies like this. Like I said, I'm really glad that it exists. Did you get a chance to see this?
No, my wife did, right when it came out, and she said it was really good. We just haven't got a chance to watch it again. She's not one to really watch movies twice either, so I think it just kind of slips her mind. But I have seen it pop up on a few lists, and going from the trailers and my initial thoughts about what kind of prospect it would have to be a good movie, I didn't think it was going to be all that special. I thought it was going to be kind of the My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but just more Asian representation, which is always a good thing. But I didn't think it was going to be really for me, so I never bothered to check it out. But all I've heard since are reasons to go and watch it, so I'll probably get around to that one in the new year too.
Yeah, so definitely hoping to see more from John Chu. Like I said, I think he's pretty much got a blank check. He can do whatever he wants on the next one. So hoping he does something interesting.
Yeah.
All right, you're number 6, right?
My number 6 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Probably one of the most fun times I've had in the theater this year. And just a really, really, really funny, heartfelt, great movie. I'm surprised by its technical achievements. I know you weren't as impressed by the animation, but I really thought it was like you hadn't seen anything like it before. And of all the other animated movies released this year, the only one that even comes close is Isle of Dogs, and that doesn't really count because it's puppets. So I think Spider-Verse is probably one of the better superhero movies of the year, but it's been a great movie for superheroes. I don't think there's been a full-on bad superhero movie. You would disagree with me about that, but I think they've all been at least okay. And Spider-Verse just kind of cuts above by being something sort of new and sort of interesting, juggling a lot of main characters, like 3 or 4 really heavy story arcs, and just knowing how to balance that comedy and that serious pathos, you know? You saw it, and we talked about it in our first podcast together.
Yeah, so if you want to go back 2 episodes, you can hear my thoughts on it. As I said, I thought it was, fine. I thought it was okay, but it definitely didn't make my top 10 list. And as you can see, it didn't make my top 5 worst. I just thought it was kind of somewhere in the middle. So
right.
Yeah, I'm glad it exists, but it wasn't great to me. My number 6, as we talked about earlier, was Upgrade for all the reasons we said before. Really worked for me. I just thought it was a little bit better. That's why it was higher on my list.
Nah, movie kills, man. I'm glad you have it higher.
And what's your number 5?
Widows, another one you didn't love, but Widows for me was everything I want out of a crime movie. Just pushing it past that level. My favorite shot of the year in any movie was that sequence where it's not really a spoiler, but there's a sequence in the film where there's a camera mounted on a car and you're in this sort of poorer black part of the neighborhood. And they talk a little bit beforehand about how if you just drive a little bit, there's a really affluent white neighborhood, almost like a suburban enclave, right in this core poor neighborhood. And they're in this car, and then the camera's mounted on the hood, and you see the transition from this like kind of urban apocalypse of like inner city America going to this like affluent neighborhood. And that shot isn't the reason why the movie's number 5, but I wanted to mention that as it's one of my favorite shots of the year, and what a killer movie.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that shot and I thought it was cool and I appreciated it, but I mean, like I said, overall, that was my problem with the movie. I think the direction was better than the script and the movie in general. So, yeah, so once again, just like Spider-Man, I thought it was a really interesting movie, but it wasn't good enough for me to make my top 10. Sure. My number 5 movie actually was Game Night. Another thing, like I said, I'm big on comedy, so if comedies work for me, they really work for me. Like I said, they always, if I see a good comedy, it'll make my top 10 list, because that's what I enjoy. It was Jason Bateman, Rachel McAdams, John Francis Daley, Kyle Chandler. I go to a comedy expecting for a good chuckle, a good laugh, but I really appreciate a good script overall. So this had a really tight script, really funny moments, it was interesting, threw some curveballs in there, but still made you laugh, and that's kind of the most important part. It reminded me of Tag. I don't know if you saw that. Tag's one of the ones that didn't make my top 10 list, but it's another one where you're expecting kind of just a bland comedy, but you get more. I really enjoyed Tag, and I really enjoyed Game Night, and I really liked Jesse Plemons' performance in this. It kind of showed how far he's come from Breaking Bad. He was just kind of the weird kind of tough guy, not tough guy, but if you've seen Breaking Bad, you know what his character was. But just seeing how far he's come and what he's doing in this, you can see he's really funny. He's got some great comedic timing. So Game Night really worked for me. Have you seen it?
Yep, and I loved it. It was a hard cut again for me. I'm not a big comedy guy, believe it or not. I'm sure you've probably figured that out. A lot of comedy doesn't really work for me. My friends always say you just don't get comedy, kind of. Like I didn't like Anchorman when it first came out. It took me years to appreciate that movie. And I have certain kinds of comedy work better for me. And usually I like a smart comedy. I like a good script. Game Night had that. I thought Tag was great too. But Game Night could have been in my top 15, whereas Tag probably not so much. I didn't love the ending of that one. I'm with you on Jesse Plemons and Game Night. That guy can do anything, and he stole the movie for me. But yeah, I thought Game Night was a really good time.
All right, what was your number 4?
Black Panther. So Black Panther is maybe the review of which that I wrote for my blog might be why you and I are even doing this. Because I think you skimmed my blog and you read the Black Panther review from first to last word, and I used to write pretty long reviews just between me and you guys at home. And Black Panther's no exception. It's the best standalone Marvel Comics universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's the best standalone from those movies. It's pretty much everything you want for a pseudo origin story, and it's doing something really unique and interesting and different. But it's also got like some teeth. There's a lot of political commentary in it. But my favorite thing about it maybe is that it's about how if we grow up, with support and with people around us who love us. We learn to have empathy and compassion. We learn how to take a third path between anger and complacency. And then what happens when you have the opposite? If you're raised in the system, if you're raised with nothing, if you're raised with no support, with a world that hates and fears you, you know, what that turns you into. So it has like probably the best Marvel villain too. Tragic character that we like to call Killmonger. I'm sure everybody's heard of him by now because this movie broke huge and everybody's seen it.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. It's just a little bit higher on my list, so I guess we'll talk about that when we get to it. My number 4 was The Hate You Give. I really, like I said, that was kind of one of the sleeper hits for me. It's kind of, I compare it to Ryan Coogler, just him doing Fruitville Station. Just I expected kind of that when I saw it, just kind of a emotionally, you know, tragic, triggering movie, that kind of thing. But this really, it was really well done, and it was more, I guess, more of a family movie than I expected it to be. The actual, the parts that the trailer expects you, the parts that the trailer make you think the movie is are kind of at the end. It's more kind of the middle part as to what fills out this movie. And I really enjoyed that. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't great to me, but I thought it was really good, which is why I put it so high on my list. I think Amanda Stenberg, I hope I said her name right. I really enjoyed her in this. You know, I feel like she's one of the new up-and-comer actors. You're going to see her in a whole bunch. She's been in a whole lot. So I think she really fit this role, you know, and I think, like I said, I think it did a good job of telling the story it was supposed to tell. I think my favorite part of the movie was the black father role. It really shed a different role on kind of the black militant father, the positive, you know, black fatherhood role model. You just don't see that a lot in movies or in TV shows these days. Kind of a not necessarily just strong, but active, you know, militant kind of black father, that they're active in their kid's life, but they also don't take no shit kind of thing. And I really enjoyed seeing that and hope to see more of it. So that's why I put it at my number 4. Did you see this one?
No, it actually, I don't think it played here even. I got some buzz on it because I subbed some classes where they were reading the novel, a grade 9 special program called Collective Voice, where it's all about citizenship and social justice. They were reading the novel in grade 9, and I read a little bit of it, actually. I read the first chapter or two, and it sucked me in big time, and I've been trying to get my hands on a copy ever since, but I keep pushing it down my reading list because I keep forgetting it exists. Like I said, the movie didn't really open here, and I forgot that it was a thing after I first saw the book, all the way until it started popping up on a bunch of end year lists. So that's just one I slept on, and I really need to get at it when I get a chance.
Definitely, like I said, I recommend it. What was your number 3 movie?
My number 3, and honestly, 3 and 4 could really be interchangeable, but my number 3 is Avengers Infinity War. That one is a big deal to me, mostly because it's a family of characters that I've been watching come together for 10 years, and while the movie does end in kind of a cliffhanger, sort of, and so it feels like half of a whole, I had to include it because there's just not a false moment in it for me. Everything, even the controversial stuff that some people didn't like, it all just works for me. If it weren't for Killmonger this year, Thanos would be the best villain in a comic book movie. He just rules. Like, it's a great movie. I'm not one of those, like, Thanos did nothing wrong people. I think that's kind of nuts. But he's just a great, sympathetic, insane monster with survivor's guilt and a bunch of myopia that makes him genocidal. But, like, he owns the movie, and the movie's about him, which is super, super cool, I thought. What a great way to do it. And everything, like, every moment, to me, just worked, man.
Yeah, agreed. I actually had that as my number 2. It just really worked for me. I don't know. It's, like I said, I think when I talked about this to you before, it's just the fact that it was the culmination of so many different movies that's just kind of impossible to fathom how anybody else could have done this other than Marvel. Because just to make, you know, was that 10 or 12 different $100 million movies, and they all have good scripts. They're all good. You know, I know the superhero fatigue is a real thing at this point just because there's so many, but it's because they keep making quality movies that people want to go see. So they keep pushing them out. And the fact that it's kind of, you know, it's a TV show. This was the series, not series finale, season finale of, you know, 10 different movies that you've been watching over the course of, once or two a year, once or twice a year. And I don't know, I think the fact that it turned out so good while packing so much into it, I just really enjoyed it. I know people give it a lot of slack. I've heard some reviews that are just really negative on it, and I'm shocked. I guess that some people are listening to my top worst 5. They're shocked. I was just as shocked listening to people hate on Infinity War, because I loved every second of it. I think
there's always a backlash.
Yeah,
always.
That was probably my favorite comic book movie, period. My favorite Marvel movie, period.
I think it's probably mine. I go back and forth on it and Black Panther for this year at least. I'm a big.
Okay, I think I just lied to myself then. My favorite movie, other than my number one, which is yet to be named.
Right. Yeah. It's like you put it really well. It's a culmination of all these other movies. It feels like it's a miracle that something like Avengers: Infinity War even exists. And what's crazy about it is it felt like a miracle when Avengers, the one in 2012, 6 years ago, that Avengers, when that happened and that hit and that movie actually worked, everybody was like, "Holy fuck, what? How is this even possible?" And then they turn around and they do it again, and with Infinity War, with a cast twice as big, maybe 3 times as big, pulling together a bunch more movies. And the Marvel guys just keep stepping it up every time. Every round of movies they do is better than the last one. So I'm just looking forward to whatever they're going to do next. What's your number 3 though? I don't think we've I don't think we've actually gotten there yet.
My number 3 we've already talked about before is Blind Spotting.
Oh shit, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so like I said, just as I said before, I just really enjoy it for existing. I'm surprised it did as well as it did with this. It was unexpected. I didn't know kind of what I was getting into. I think I saw people comparing it to other movies of that ilk, where just I guess the same as people were having comic book movie fatigue, they were having black people get killed by police fatigue, which is depressing, but. Yeah, so the fact that it was so good is something I really appreciated. And in fact, I don't know, it was a lot deeper than I expected to be. And I'm hoping Carlos Lopez Estrada can do some more like it. Like I said, I guess that's the common theme. I was surprised a lot with my top 10 list, and I'm just looking forward to what they do next. And like I said, they got a blank check in my book. Whatever he makes next, I'm going to see. But yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. Daveed Diggs too. Whatever he does next. Yeah. I'm in.
Daveed Diggs, when I think of him, I think of Blackish. He was like the uncle on Blackish. So just to see him in a full role on here was just, I said, I'm interested in seeing what that guy does. But all right, moving on. What was your number 2? We're into the thick of it now.
Yeah, now we're coming full circle. My number 2 movie of the year, which I really thought, even though I saw it so early in the year, that it was going to end as the number 1 movie of the year for me, is Annihilation. Everything about that movie works for me. Everything that didn't work for you works completely for me. Like I said, I had the opposite relationship with the movie versus the book that you did. I thought the book was it was all right, but I didn't think that it was all that interesting in terms of it kind of kept you too far to remove. It's too mysterious almost for you to really. You have to read the sequels in order to understand what's really going on in it. And Annihilation is still mysterious, but also offers a lot of really, I think, amazingly interesting and strange imagery that you've never seen anywhere else. Like, especially the last 30 or so minutes of the movie, I live for sci-fi movies that do weird stuff like that. Like, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. And the soundtrack, I think, is magnificent. So those are things I didn't mention before, but I think by now everybody knows how I feel about this one.
I'm just gonna hard disagree on that, because everything you liked, I didn't.
breaks my heart. So we already kind of talked about it a little bit, but your number 2 is Avengers: Infinity War, right?
That it is. Yeah. Like I said, just for all the reasons we just talked about, it really worked for me. Like I said, if it wasn't for my number 1, that would have been my number 1 movie this year. I guess I have a thing for comic book movies. Spoiler alert. It wasn't, other than my number 1 movie, there wasn't as good of a movie-going experience. So, like I said, I've probably seen better movies this year, with better drama or whatever, that's just a better script and better, quote unquote acting or what have you. But just going to the movies and sitting for 2 hours and walking out, that was probably my second best theater experience. So that's why I put it so high. All right, drum roll please. What is your number 1 movie of 2018?
My number 1 movie was Suspiria, a remake of a 1977, I think, horror film that I've seen. and is actually really, really good. But this movie is like an art house horror epic, whereas the first one is mostly just art house horror. It's a Dario Argento film, and he makes some weird stuff. This new one, though, is like an expansion. So it digs into all the stuff that the first one didn't do, because it was a lot more atmospheric and a lot more light on lore and plot. And Suspiria just has way more story to tell. It's pretty long. It's 2.5 hours long, and every single second of it is justified. And it features some of the most like strange and awesome imagery. It's very horrific and scary, and it has like a killer dance number halfway through that it's just like, it's just awesome. I like a good dance scene in a movie. I'm jealous of people who can dance, so whenever there's a good dance scene in a movie, I'm there. But Suspiria is just like a crazy good witch movie, and it doesn't lean too heavily on like the stuff that you see pop up a lot, like Satanism and whatever. So it's not like that. It's not kind of kitschy witchness like you see with like Sabrina on Netflix there, where it's kind of kitschy and cheesy. Suspiria isn't cheesy at all. It's a lot more strange.
Yeah, I didn't see it at all. It's not really my cup of tea. I'm not really a horror guy. Horror never really works for me. I know you kind of raved and ranted about it, and so I know intellectually it's probably a good movie, but I have no motivation to sit down and watch it. But like I said, just
if you do, I doubt you're gonna like it.
And that's the thing. If I'm so, that's what kind of worries me. Your number 2 best movie of the year was, I think, my number 3 worst. So it's just that big of a gap. That
we'll always have Marvel.
Oh yeah,
right? That's our Rosetta Stone. That's our common ground. We're both nerds. We both like comic book movies. We'll just, you'll be the comedy guy and I'll be the horror guy.
Gee, so without further ado, let me dig into my number 1 movie of the year, and no surprise, that's Black Panther. I don't know where to begin on this one. I don't know if any of you listen to the Slash Film Cast as well. They actually read my email, because I walked out of this so mesmerized that I actually wrote in an email to my favorite movie podcast. So they actually read it on the air. That's how much,
nice.
That's how, moved I was. I walked out of this stunned. People throw around the term speechless, but I was quite literally speechless. I had nothing I could say. I think the end credit song, All the Stars by Kendrick and SZA, I feel like that was the perfect way to end that movie. I think that song fits so well, and the visuals that were playing over the song fit so well that I was stuck. I was stuck in my seat. I couldn't move. Like I said, just what I just saw spoke so much to me. How surprised I was that it existed. I don't know. It just, like I said, that when we're talking about movie going experiences, walking into a movie, that's why I kind of misspoke when I talked about Infinity War, that it being my favorite Marvel movie ever, because I just put this in a whole different category. That's probably one of the best movie going experience I've ever had, period. To where you literally I was speechless. Just being black and seeing just a movie full of black characters, not talking about being black, not being a slave movie, just being a movie, being a well-written movie. Kind of same thing I said about Crazy Rich Asians, where it's just a movie, just so happens to have Asian characters, just like Black Panther just so happens to have black characters, just telling a black story. I don't know, it meant a whole lot. And on top of just being that, it was actually a whole lot of black commentary, black social commentary, just the black militants versus the Martin Luther King versus the Malcolm X kind of thing going on. And then you can see both sides of the story, and both people are fully fleshed out. You can see who T'Challa is. You can really see Killmonger's his point of view. You can understand him. A whole lot of people walked out thinking, "Hey, Killmonger was right. He had the right way of things."
Yeah.
That was a big conversation. So I don't know. Like I said, I can gush about this for an hour. This, like I said, if I just walked out speechless. This movie meant a whole lot to me, not only as a movie, but personally. Like this was probably my best movie of the decade, top 5 movies I've ever seen in my life, period. So definitely number 1 this year. So, but yeah, it was your number 4, so not quite as high, but like I said,
no, yeah, I mean, it could have been like easy, you know what I mean? Like, It's just I feel the same thing as you do when I'm gonna put. I always feel that reflexive bit of like I have to defend the fact that I'm choosing to put in comic book movies, which are still sort of trivialized. Like instead of something like Roma or whatever, like some prestige movie that some guy who's like, who can like, but I mean, Coogler's the real deal anyway. So Black Panther isn't directed by some AD or second unit guy. The action kind of is, which is like about the only bad thing I'd ever say about Black Panther is not all the action is very good. But like Coogler is the real deal. Like he's up and coming. He's just getting started, but he's gonna be remembered. He's gonna be one of those big names that we're talking about in 30 years. I think. I feel that very strongly. And it's just a great film. I don't think anybody would ever question that one being on your number one spot or anyone's number one spot.
Yeah, just I don't know, just the culmination of how much had to happen for this to exist. The fact that Marvel gave him, $200 million to make a movie because they knew the script. They knew what it was going to be long before this was, in theaters. So the fact that they gave him the money to make it and he didn't, whitewash it, water it down, have a bunch of, light-skinned characters and, blah, blah, blah. It's just so much social commentary, so well directed. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, just top one, top 5 period. Just I don't know. I loved it. I've got Black Panther pajamas for Christmas. I got Black Panther socks.
Nice, nice.
Like I said, it's just like I said. The only thing that scares me is Black Panther 2. How do you follow this up? What do you do? I don't want this to be the Grindelwald of Black Panther universe where you watch it and it makes you think less of Black Panther 1. Just don't kill my dreams. Just let me have it. I don't need a Black Panther 2. Actually, just let me have it.
Coogler's doing it, and the thing about Marvel sequels, like just to give you some reassurance, which maybe you don't need, but I'm gonna give it to you anyway. Marvel's been getting better at sequels since like Iron Man 2 was kind of a dud. I know you didn't like Iron Man 3 very much, but generally speaking, their second movies are better than the first ones, right? Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I would argue, is better. Some would disagree. I think Ant-Man 2 is probably better than Ant-Man 1. Yeah, you weren't a big fan of that one, but still, like they at least try, right? Yeah. So I think if nothing else, Black Panther 2 will be something special, even if it's not quite. I mean, how could it ever be as special as Black Panther? Like as a more or less white guy, I've never seen anything like Black Panther. Nothing like that has ever existed before, which is exactly what I found so exciting about it. I'm sure that was something you and I would have in common, but for you, it's a lot more personal, right?
Yeah.
But Black Panther 2 can't do that, right? It's already happened. That's kind of
what worries me is the Creed 2. The fact that somebody other than Ryan Coogler directed Creed 2 and it wasn't as good as the first, and that's fine because it's not the same thing, but it'll be the same guy, the same studio, the same everything. So if it's a letdown, it's worse of a letdown than Creed 2 not being as great, but I don't know. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But
it'll be interesting to talk about it if we get a chance when Black Panther 2 hits.
Definitely.
It's like I think it's 2 years away maybe, but it's coming. It's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. So that is our top 10 list of the year, as well as our top 5 worst. Before we wrap it up, I want to ask, is there anything you wish you saw? Just kind of honorable mentions?
Oh, fuck. There are tons, man. I'll try to narrow it down to a few obvious ones. There's quite a few indie movies that aren't even really like they're the kind of movies that like might play near you but probably don't, so they don't really come out until the next year anyway. But the ones that I missed that I really wanted to see were Bodied. Big Joseph Kahn fan. I know you saw Bodied. We mentioned a few more like Blockers. I wanted to see a movie called The Oath. It has the same guy in it, Ike Barinowitz, I think his name is. I'm probably saying it wrong. I wanted to see The Favorite. I wanted to see The House That Jack Built, Lars von Trier's movie. Leave No Trace, A Star Is Born, If Beale Street Could Talk, Roma, I didn't get a chance to see, Anna and the Apocalypse, even Paddington 2 I really wanted to see and didn't get a chance to. The Hate You Give we mentioned, Soderbergh's movie Unsane I wanted to see. Quite a few like movies like that. There's a Western I wanted to see called The Sisters Brothers, Destroyer by Karen Kusama. So lots.
Mine. I only had a few that I kind of wish I saw, just for this list. I mean, there were a lot that I kind of didn't see, but if Beale Street Could Talk as well, I'm thinking that's kind of one of the things that would have made my list if I got a chance to see it, but I didn't. That's why I didn't make it. Same 8th Grade, Heard that's really good. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff I wish I would have saw, but these specifically, I feel like those are the kind of ones that would have made my list, but I just didn't get a chance to see them. Green Book as well. I think that was actually getting pretty mixed reviews, so I'm a little worried about that one, but I did want to see that just for Mahershala Ali, if nothing else. And then Won't You Be My Neighbor? I heard really good things about that, but just didn't get a chance to see it.
That one too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. Thanks for joining us in 2018 for the little bit of time that we've been here. Hopefully, we do this all 2018, and we can see. Can look forward to whatever we catch up with at the end of next year. All right, and next week we're gonna, for the first episode of 2019, we're gonna start off kind of just by what we're looking forward to in 2019, what we think is gonna be good, and then we're gonna end that up with a full review of Netflix's new interactive special, Bandersnatch. Looking forward to that. That's kind of one of those choose your own adventure things. So we might not even see the same movie. So looking forward to our conversation for next week.
Yeah, and if you're a Black Mirror fan, it's technically a Black Mirror episode, and of course they continue to push the envelope, right? So. Oh
yeah, looking forward to it. All right, so where can we find more of your stuff on the internet?
You can hit me up on Twitter at Evan Todd-McCoy, no spaces, and I'm relaunching my blog sort of, or coming back off hiatus. So come look for some work on thunderclam.wordpress.com. And of course, you can always find reviews every week from me at sirwaka.com.
And you can find me at sirwaka on Twitter. And you can email me at sirwaka@gmail.com, SIRRWAKA@gmail.com. And obviously, you can check out our site, sirwaka.com. Thank you guys for joining us, and I'll see you next year.
See ya.